Welcome back to Between Two Pickles. This episode is once again brought to you by Recruit Raiders. Thank you so much to them for sponsoring the episode. Are you tired of fighting with OpenSea? Click the current listings tab to find Raiders for sale here on our USDC marketplace. They take less fees than OpenSea, and I know OpenSea has had some really bad downtime recently, and you can look and see which recruiters have or haven't recruited. They've got mobs, and he's getting mounts integration up and running. Personal favorite feature is trades. If you're tired of having a good deal with someone and wanting to trade some raiders for some mobs or some mounts, and you guys want a middleman, you don't trust each other, you can do it right here. They take a tiny fee, but it's super safe. Anyway, back to the show, or let's get into the show, I should say, and a very warm welcome to our guest today from our beloved Crypto Raiders game. He's the corgi lover. He's a stats balancer, magician, game engineer. Centurion is here with me. Welcome, man. Great to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I've been really excited about this for a while now.
Awesome, dude. So I've got, so much to ask Crypto Raiders content-wise. You're obviously one of the big game engineers now. Everyone loves the corgi. So there's been so many really cool updates, especially recently with the game. We're just going to launch straight in here. In my opinion, there's been some very healthy and amazing stat balances, kind of rolling out progressively one after the other. But we'll get to that. First, I want to ask a bit about your background, in as much detail as you're willing to share. We're not doxing you yet. I know the team is talking about doxing soon if we go huge, but what drew you to game engineering, game design, and I assume you were really into gaming before you got into the creation side of the games as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So my background is mainly in in statistics and data analytics. And that's been really important for the stats side, and that's what's guided me in a lot of the decisions we've made, because we've built the game out a little differently than some other games do. Web3 is really interesting. Um, but I've loved games my entire life. I've played them really avidly for as long as I can remember. Um, Based on that and based on my love for data analytics, it seemed kind of like the perfect opportunity to get into this world. Is as much as I love playing them, it's even more fun to design them. So the mechanics, the strategy, overcoming your opponent with a combination of real-time decision and long-term commitment, I think is really cool, and that's what makes games like this special. Right now we're a little bit lacking on the strategy side. We're looking forward to adding in more components that let you pick, more decisions in battle. But kind of that short-term decision, but then also that long-term commitment to the game. Getting that loot, leveling up, progressing. Those come together to create a really awesome experience. And so that's kind of what drove me to wanting to develop that, is trying to put those two pieces together and give people something that they really enjoy.
Yeah, awesome. And I know, bearing in mind we're still in pre-alpha, and it's come a long
Oh
way
yeah.
since what 3, 4, 5 months ago even, since the original stats came out.
Mhm.
I really like what you said there. What was the phrase you used? Long-term commitment and short-term decision.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple different ways, but I think real time's a good one. Short term, anything like that. Pick in your build, stuff like that.
Yeah, that really resonates with me because that's what it feels like. You're picking your stats based off your best items, or maybe the other way around, and you have that long-term commitment. But we know we're getting all this stuff starting to come out, like potions and maybe the skill tree and these kinds of things that really make that short-term, PvP or PvE battle really, really interesting. And how do we build that around that long-term commitment that we've decided on? It's so much fun. It's really exciting, dude. I love the way you put that.
Thank you. No, I'm glad. It's been an awesome experience. So it's good to hear that people are kind of getting that feel already as we start rolling more stuff out.
Yeah, for sure. So, on that note, you were originally really into gaming and you studied and you have a background in data analytics and statistics. Um,
Hmm.
at what point did that kind of lead you to as you said, Web3, crypto, the NFT space? What was that catalyst or spark that led you here and then finding and joining the amazing Crypto Raiders team?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of an odd story. So my roommate at the time was like really deep into crypto and NFTs. And as he was telling me about it, I kind of started thinking, like how are games doing in this space? Like, I heard more about NFT stuff being, given like a basic game to go along with it.
What was this
And
been last year or a couple of years ago?
no, this would have been like about a month before I joined the team.
Okay.
So I was not as deep into, the NFT crypto side as he was. I was just like, oh, I'm trading some cryptocurrencies, doing all that stuff. And then as soon as
Selling high,
we started living together,
buying low, or selling low and
yeah,
buying
pretty
high?
much. Yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
My timing wasn't as good. Otherwise, I maybe wouldn't be doing game dev.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be spending on the game, not being paid to do it. But once he told me about that, I was like, dude, this is, something that gaming's underrepresented in this space. And so I sat down and I
Totally.
basically, over the span of a few days, drew out a like a outline for how I think a game should work in this space. Like a transitional type game where it takes a bunch of old gaming components, but also integrates, the DeFi side and all of that. Um, and I shared it with another friend of mine, and he was like, "Dude, I know a guy who runs a current NFT game, and they're putting these exact concepts into it." And so, he put me in touch with SAS, and SAS was the one that ran the game, and it was just a perfect match. Like,
No
Crypto
way.
Raiders emphasizes play and earn. We've been saying it for a while now here. Um, he read through the stuff and was like, this is really good stuff. Like, this is the kind of mindset that we need to have for this game, and this is the direction we're taking. And so he was like, we want to have you on to do strategy to help us think for our forward moving updates and mechanics. And so just kind of all of that was the perfect storm. I forget what Sass called it. He was like, it's one of those like stars aligning moments where they had literally that week been talking about how they needed to start thinking about expansive content, because Crypto Raiders at that time was really really ramping up. And so it was just kind of the perfect timing deal where he
And here you
got
come
me in.
along
And
with what you've just written about your idea for how games should be implemented. And you're like, yep, I've got it.
yeah, exactly. And
Just that
some of those
perfect kind of the
concepts
glove
we've
fits moment. Yeah.
yeah, and we've taken some of those concepts and refined them and turned them into, tried and true game mechanics. And then, others, are still going to need like more time to develop thoroughly. But, and I'm not, we have so many people on the team that are incredible with their contributions to the concepts. I think I get a lot of credit for mechanics and stuff because I'm the one that, often updates the community on them. But we have so many people that are contributing to that, and so it's awesome. Um, but yeah, it was a really, really strange intro to the Crypto Raiders team. It wasn't one of those deals where I was trying to find a bunch of games to get into or whatever. It was just the right person. SAS was the right guy to go to, and I was the right guy to have come to him. And yeah, it was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, dude. Like, really got a nice bit of luck there. And I've had Sass on a couple times. He's an absolute legend. So I can see how that would have hooked you in pretty quick, right?
Oh, and then I guess the other interesting thing I should mention is I came in, I already had a job, and I came in and I was like, yeah, like I'll come in and think of, help think of ideas on the side, like, learn about the game a little bit and all of that. And then 1 week later, I was like, I'm quitting my real job, like coming into this full time, and I did, I did it. Like
Wow.
after like just a couple weeks, I was already making that transition, and
Wow.
so yeah, I've got everything put into this game, and I'm loving it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a huge change, right? Like, so how long had you been
Oh
at your
yeah,
other job?
not a crazy long time, long
Right.
enough to where I could justify leaving for this, but it's one of those deals where, I don't have a family yet or anything, so it's a once in a lifetime opportunity,
Oh, for sure.
to come into, and once I got integrated with the team here, I was like, I could work with these people for the rest of my life. And I didn't feel that way about my other job. It was fine, but this was special, and I
Yeah.
wasn't about to pass it up.
No, that sounds that sounds so incredible because like everyone I speak to from the team, and then you look at the community, that's what everyone feels. Do you know what I mean? Like the
Oh
team
yeah.
is incredibly tight knit, confident in their abilities, amazing people, and they take care of each other and the community, and then the community take care. It's just really, really. I'm just so happy for you guys, for you, the team, and for the community that we have this. When you look at, some of these other projects that get rugged and that get hacked and that have these people that spread, FUD and dissent and they're disloyal. It's we're so lucky to have this, and the more I hear about it, the more I'm so happy to be a part of this. Like, yeah, it's crazy, and I'm glad that you guys keep iterating that. Every one of you guys keep saying it. Gives me
Oh
so much
yeah. No, it's
confidence.
awesome. I mean, it's such a cool experience to get to work with, everyone that's on this team, and we're really fortunate to have each other, but we're also really fortunate to have the community that we have. And I think that there's some great values that are reciprocated within our team and between our team and the community and between the community and one another, that really makes it into that. People are kind of like you said, like they're kind, they're caring, they're inquisitive. They people love to ask questions, and I think that's awesome. And I think that we love to
Yeah,
answer questions, and that's one thing that I think bodes well for our team compared to other projects. Is we like the transparency, we like to have that where we can.
yeah,
Whereas with traditional gaming and with traditional I guess they're not traditional yet, but with a lot of Web3 gaming, that hasn't been the case.
yeah.
So we're definitely very proud of that.
Well, and you said it before. You said that everyone is contributing and everyone has ideas, even if it's not their you know specific area of expertise. Like it's a whole team made game. Like everyone's
Yeah,
all in.
you wouldn't believe how many incredible contributions we've gotten from Ken that aren't on the art side. He's a
Right.
phenomenal artist, but he he's a thinker too, and he's creative,
I
and
definitely
he
I
uh,
definitely
he's
get that
been
sense from
awesome.
having spoken to him a couple times. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's awesome, dude. So we're getting some questions in chat already, but we'll take some questions at the end uh, of the podcast from the community. But there's a really good one there, which I was going to ask about before we go a bit deeper, which was, what are some of your big influences in gaming and some of your favorite games that kind of influence the way you think about game design, and like you said, that kind of made you think about how you should be able to design the way that you envisioned Web3 gaming going.
Definitely. I'm happy to talk about that. So, the one that I've played most extensively is Maple Story, which is a little bit of a weird one. We've got a lot of people on the team that have experience with it, and I know several people in the community have experience with it.
Okay, so I
But
have none. So if you want to give a brief
yeah,
overview as well, then yeah, I've never heard of this. So
sure. So it never like it got that level of popularity, at least in the US, as, World of Warcraft and RuneScape and all that. It was a 2D game.
right,
And I think that kind of at that time, 3D games had just started to emerge, and they kind of stole the show, in my opinion. The movement stuff was really fascinating to people, and the 3D graphics, and so people were gravitating towards that. And then kind of in the shadows, there was this incredible game, in my opinion, MapleStory, and
Right.
it's got a massive class system. Um, it's a little bit grindy of a game. It's the kind where, you're spending hours and hours to play it. And it's not as heavily team oriented. A lot of people play it solo, but then the community aspect is really big. So there's a huge emphasis on communicating with friends on there and that kind of thing. But as far as the actual gameplay, a lot of it is solo. And then it's got bossing. It's got some very grindy PvP, some very strategic bossing. Huge emphasis on DPS. It's not quite the in-depth like defensive approach and timing and healing stuff, which is why I think that, or where I think it's lacking. Um,
Okay.
but I wish I had some graphics handy. But it's a very beautifully designed game in my opinion. They have very smooth attacks, brilliant graphics. But it's a 2D side-scrolling game, and so it kind of got left out of that main scene, in my opinion.
So is that kind of like it was at the end of an era where 3D graphics just started taking over and got forgotten a bit? Because I've never heard of
Yeah,
it.
I think it
Yeah.
just came in at the wrong time, and I don't know how the
Right.
exact timelines of those games line up, but it had great loot systems, great a lot of really great things about it. The classes are the one that I liked the most. It was basically you're encouraged to have one character from every class. So you get like 40 character slots and you're
Oh
encouraged to
wow.
like play all of them. Yeah, it's
There's
not
40
one where
classes.
yeah, because you're locked in from like level 10. You pick
Wow.
a
Okay.
class at like level 10 and you're permanently locked in. There's no way to change it. Um, and so to allow for that, they're like, you should have a lot of characters because that makes it more fun. And you get to experience all the play styles whenever you want just by going to that character. So it was interesting.
Yeah. So Maple Story. You mentioned to me as well Pokemon. Really?
Oh,
Yeah. Do you want to talk about
yeah,
Pokemon?
sure. So I played Pokemon growing up. Probably everyone has. But probably in the past decade, I started getting really into the competitive side. Not VGC is what they call like the main competitive scene for Pokemon, but there's a fantastic website called Pokemon Showdown, which is basically a battle simulator. But they have a very expansive or extensive list of tiers, and so those different tiers dictate which Pokemon you can have on your team. And once you get into that side of Pokemon and the intricacies of the battle mechanics and the stat mechanics and all of that, it's an incredibly impressive game. Um,
I had
the
no idea there
strategy
was
that you
a
can.
high level competition for Pokemon. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it's really crazy once you look into that stuff. A lot opens up from the strategy side, and
So
if you
so is it going to be
watch,
more than in terms of strategy, more than just the classes of the Pokemon like grass beats rock or
oh yeah,
yeah, okay.
it's really crazy. A lot of the moves that seem useless in the game are like incredibly useful and competitive, and vice versa. A lot of the moves that people rely on in the games are like pretty useless in competitive Pokemon. So I kind of have an appreciation for that level of intricacy that was just like hidden under the game the entire time. You can play through Pokemon perfectly fine and not know how any of those like underlying mechanics work.
Yeah.
And I always thought that that was very impressive and that that was like a good model for a game. Enjoyable for everyone, but if someone really wants to look into it, there should be something more to discover.
So highly accessible, but at the same time, if you want to take a deep dive into it, highly competitive as well. That's really
Yes,
interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this isn't like a team view necessarily because I don't think we've had like an open discussion about it, but I know personally that's something that I aspire to for Crypto Raiders is, I don't want someone to allocate stats randomly and not be able to play the game. I feel
Right.
like you should be able to cluelessly, um, not feel like you suck at a game. But at the same time, for the competitive side, there needs to be some strategy to it, and that's kind of what we're working towards right now is getting more options and that sort of thing into the game. That way, there is a thought process, in a battle, um, to add that layer of complexity and give that enjoyment, to the critical thinkers, to the people that like that challenge.
Totally. So, yeah, on that note, I think we should definitely talk a bit about the stat changes or stats in general within Crypto Raiders and how those games have influenced your input and your thoughts, exactly like you've been saying, on the Crypto Raiders balancing. So we've had a big balance rework for stats that came out just after the Christmas dungeons, and now we've had a big tweak and then a couple little tweaks for that rebalancing that's totally changed what used to be a 200 to 300 crit agi build into the stable dodgy build now.
Right.
So what's been some of the logic, the ideas behind the way that's progressed?
Sure. And so, and I'll kind of walk through it chronologically. Um, ideally in any game, you don't have to, make crazy stat balances. People don't like change. As developers, really you don't like change either. Like you
Right.
don't want to have to go in and rework and do the retesting, but it's really important for longevity.
Would this kind of,
So
sorry to interrupt, but would this kind of change
yeah.
then have happened like in a traditional gaming sense before it's been released to the community at all? Because we're basically
Yeah.
here, getting a game that's completely new. Stats, okay, we're gonna make stats. They're out. Try them. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, exactly. This is stuff that would generally take place before a game's ever been released. You know, like games traditionally take months of balancing. They do all of that with, numbers.
Yeah.
Running simulations, evaluating mechanics. And part of that is because most of the mechanics are introduced immediately as well.
Right.
When you start a game, the max level isn't level 5. It's level 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get everyone racing to the top all at once from day one. Um, but for live shipping a game like this, it's created some really interesting stuff. And I think at first we were like, we need, well, always, you should be careful about changing the stats. But after a little while, we realized like the community is really inquisitive about this. Like they want to learn too. Like we should probably present them with some opportunities to help with that testing. Because you can rely on numbers, and then the spreadsheets can say this and the data can say that. But at the end of the day, what's important is how the game feels.
Yeah.
And what we found is that with the old
Totally.
stat mechanics, the game just didn't really feel the way it should feel. Dodges were way too heavy, and there wasn't anything you could do to get around it.
Hmm.
Every class was missing all the time, regardless of your opponent. Um, the actual like calculations weren't scalable. I remember going through like an example with a community member one day where I showed them like their current stats, the way they were allocated, and then what they would look like at level 100 with that same spread. And basically, the only two stats that were going to be able to expand to that level were damage and HP. Every other
Right.
stat was gonna be capped out like at level like 10.
Right.
You were gonna hit the cap for hit rate. You were gonna hit the cap for crit rate and all of that. And so it's been an interesting challenge to try to allow people to feel strong and developed at level 8 because, that's the max, but to still give them places to grow as the levels increase. Because if you're at 60% crit rate right now and that's the max you can get to, well, by level 100, you should be able to hit 100 crit rate if you're dedicated to that stat. But it's not linear. You
Yeah.
can't. With percent stuff especially, um, you have to find a way for people to be able to grow their crit rate as they level without them being able to hit it right now. Because if you could have 100% crit rate right now, going to level 100 would feel like nothing. It would just be damage,
Yeah.
which is cool, but not as immersive, at
Not as
least in our opinion,
satisfying almost,
as
right?
a player. Yeah, like, everyone likes seeing their damage go up, but if you knew right now, like every secondary component of your character is going to be the exact same as you level, and it's just your damage that's going to go up, uh, all you're going to do is pump your stat into whatever increases your damage. That's it.
Yeah.
Um, and again, plenty of games are structured like that, and people love it. But when you're live shipping a game, people need to be seeing those changes, in my opinion. Um, but sorry, I kind of got off on a
No, that's
tangent
great.
there,
It makes
but
a lot of sense. Yeah.
yeah, but that was the number one issue that we identified with the old stats. And then in addition to that, a lot of them just didn't feel the way that you would maybe expect them to feel. Um, like we looked at it, and strength was just like really weak, and it wasn't that bulky. Like it didn't hit the way you would expect. It didn't take damage the way you would expect.
Yeah.
Similarly, Agi was hitting, insanely hard, with ridiculous crit damage numbers. Whereas when you think about something that's agile, it's quick, it's light, and it gets jabs in.
Yeah.
It's not taking that heavy swing. And so that was when SAS kind of sat down and said, okay, like here's, when I think of these stats, this is about what I think they should look like. Agi kind of being that dodgy class with little jabs and stuff like that. And then he released that in the theory crafting chat for feedback. He was like, I need to know what you guys think about this. Like, does this feel more like a traditional gameplay style? And overwhelmingly, the response was yes. Like, this looks a lot better than what we have currently. Like, this would make the stats operate the way we would expect them to, based on the words and the descriptions.
Yeah.
So then he handed that to me, and he was like, "The game needs to look like this." I was just like, "Okay, cool, we can do that."
Next challenge. Let's go.
Yeah. So after really early into testing, that was when I kind of realized, like, oh, um, these calculations that we had at the start aren't going to scale super well, especially with these changes. And that's kind of why the rework ended up being such a big deal and requiring so many different components to change. Is we don't want to have to make multiple big reworks, so we kind of had to pack it all into one, for the sake of future rollouts and not having to tackle that problem later.
Yeah.
And again, these are things that would normally be tweaked in just like that pre-release where you haven't released the game yet, but the game's built and you've got 6 months of testing, balancing, whatever.
Yeah.
So
And then from there, it's just like little balances, changing the meta if something gets too OP or that kind of thing.
pretty much, some of that stuff comes and goes, and a lot of it still has to do with RNG because you have a limited number of decisions in a battle. Um, And so what you find in testing may not always be what the community finds in practice, which is crazy because you would think that, if you run a simulation that is identical to, what the community would be doing, then you think the answer would be the same every time.
Hmm.
But our community's creative. They find all sorts of test cases that don't look as crazy on paper. You got to see them in practice, and that's why so much of my testing involves uh, not running statistical analysis like I'm used to, but rather, setting up a mechanic and then playing through it, multiple times or hundreds of times to feel, how the game feels. And that was the main kind of the North Compass or the North Star rather for designing these rebalances is how does it feel when you play the game? And does that line up with what you'd expect as a user?
Yeah.
And then the slight balances, yeah, are more of a byproduct of, okay, well, um, these stats feel really good in dungeons, but when you get into the PvP side, you're finding that, this one stat is just way too reliable. And so people are dumping all their points into this or that. And that's kind of where we get into the minor balancing changes. But we're going to be putting that on more of a schedule moving forward. So it'll be like,
Right.
perhaps at the end of the month, we'll take a step back, reassess the stats and the things that we've collected over that past month and make those slight adjustments. We don't want to be doing it on the fly.
Yeah, for sure. Because then it just gives everyone a chance, or not even a chance, but the feel like there's a plan, and you guys are noticing things, and okay, we're gonna do this now, and it's not just, hey guys, this is super strong, we're changing it all of a sudden.
Exactly.
Because
And we
like you
wouldn't.
said, people don't like change.
Exactly. Yeah, and they shouldn't have to get used to that change either. Like I appreciate how great people have been at accepting the changes that happen, but at the same time, like we don't want them to kind of get used to that standard of like, oh, like, you never know what your build should be because it could change the next day at any minute. Like, that's going to be a thing of the past because you know, the the more we get closer to that target of like what the game should feel like, the less we're gonna have to make those changes and the more minor they can be.
Yeah.
The most important thing was getting those integrated before we get too developed in the competitive scene, before we get too developed in, before we make that next big jump in player count and explosiveness. We have to make sure that those fundamentals are sound, and we've gotten on a really good point for those, so
Oh
we're
yeah,
happy about that.
totally feels like it's the right way to go, and from the playing it perspective, like the way stats are now, it does. It just has this feel that's a lot more satisfying and a lot more. My choices matter. Like it doesn't. I'm not going to be at a huge disadvantage if I put 10 points in luck, because all of a sudden I am critting more, but I'm a little less tanky, and it all feels like I have a lot more choice, and that choice matters.
Sure, that's good. That's what we want. That's what we want to develop. And the interesting thing that we've realized in doing this is that when you only have two pieces of gear and you only have two choices in battle, either attack or use a rune, the balancing is a lot more apparent. Disparities
Yeah,
between classes are a lot more apparent because the battles are so linear, and that's why we're so excited to be introducing those new mechanics. Here in the coming months of having abilities and talent tree and just giving we've said it for a while now, giving players options in all aspects of a game are so crucial and so important. So we're looking forward to that, and we think it's going to really, spice up the battle scene quite a bit.
oh for sure, I'm so excited, dude. um yeah, so I mean, you mentioned only two pieces of gear, so does that mean hats are coming? Hats are in.
It definitely means that we will be introducing more gear slots. Most
Woo.
of our most of our updates right now are contingent on that re-architecture of our of our backend stuff that we've been mentioning for a while. Because that absolutely has to be in place before we roll out these updated features, and it's a massive undertaking. But yeah, that those more gear pieces are going to be awesome. They're going to help people modify their builds, and they're going to be about more than just stacking stats on stats.
Totally.
We want to add as many strategic components as we can that aren't just who can run a dungeon 10,000 times.
And so that might, yeah, 10,000 dungeon runs. Yeah, good luck getting there with that. The key cost.
You'd be surprised.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen some crazy people just be like, "Yo, just drop 2,000 USDC on keys. Let's raid." I'm like, what? What? Okay.
Yeah.
And then they get a light
Right.
bringer, so I guess it's worth it. But so there's a lot of new. They're not new ideas, but new stuff coming for Crypto Raiders. Um, what are there kind of like any new interactions or mechanics that are gonna have interplay, like specific runes with specific classes, these kind of things that are gonna have an impact, with the overall feel of stats?
Sure. So we're kind of working on internal definitions to make sure that we can have distinctions between these things. But we have the rune system, and that's single use in a battle. And then on the other side of things, we're gonna have talents and abilities, and those are things that will not be single use in a battle. There's going to be some opportunity cost to using them. You'll have to evaluate your timing of them. You'll have to evaluate which ones you want to be taking into battle. Um, and so that's kind of where we've been looking to expand the game in terms of options for the players. Is runes will be something that you discover in a dungeon, and that's great if you're lucky, and you can pair it with your talents and abilities however you want. Um, but then the talents and abilities will be more of that long-term commitment where you've put points into these, you've developed these to match your play style, and you're building your character the way that you want your raider. You're building your raider the way that you want them to be.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where we have a lot of complexity we can add in. When runes you can equip on anything, and so they kind of have this vague purpose. We've locked some of them a little bit with stats. Ice barrier scales with int, stuff like that. But
Yep.
they're still general purpose. You could put ice barrier on any class. Talents and abilities are designed to be a little bit more specific going forward. So they might only be usable by a certain class, or they may only be usable by a certain weapon. Um,
Oh wow. Okay.
so yeah, so we have a lot of options we're considering there, but at the end of the day, it all circles back to giving people options, kind of like I mentioned at the start of this, long term and short term. You've got some long term decisions you're making with how you're building your character, and then you have some short-term decisions about what you're going to equip, what you're going to take into this battle versus the next battle, and then even more short-term, like how are you going to order your attacks in this battle?
Yeah. Try and hit combos or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. Kind of that dynamic strategy, that real-time strategy where you have to react to your opponent.
So cool. I'm I'm already thinking forward to what kind of builds, like you said, you might have a skill with certain weapons. What builds work with certain weapons, or vice versa, because right now meta is very much Lightbringer, but the best weapon with the best total stats basically. Um, but you're saying if you got a handy wand or something that unlocks the ability to use a certain skill, all of a sudden it's got you've got that decision. Okay, I've got less stats, but I have a really strong skill. Is that the kind of way your decision process is going?
Yeah, exactly. And so you hit the nail right on the head with that. And it's looking at, this gear has more cost associated with it than, or more value associated with it than just the stats. Perhaps the gear allows you to use an ability, or perhaps the gear gives you some sort of passive buff on a certain ability or a certain rune. Um,
Right.
Stats are very easy to quantify and compare to each other, just on that kind of that long-term basis. But using a certain, um, boost to a rune or boost to an ability could change depending on your opponent, depending on the battle. And so that's where you get into more subjective ways to look at the value of something, and that's where it becomes really fun as a player.
Totally.
Is this, a Lightbringer is important to everyone. But as you mentioned, like a handy wand, let's say it improves escape artist. You might think handy wand is more of like a mage or an int piece. Let's say it improves the duration of escape artist. Well, then all of a sudden, that common handy wand is now actually pretty useful in the right scenario. And so kind of adding that subjective value to items is something that really opens up opportunities as a player, in our
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, and I just remembered as well that there was a mention of like set gear having a combo bonus as well.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, we wanted to roll that out, earlier than we have, but we decided that it's not something that the meta is quite ready for. Once you have more options in there, it's going to be awesome.
you
But
guys.
right now, it would just be stacking stats, which isn't what our meta needs.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's that kind of, oh, I can see you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are going to love
A little bit.
it.
Yeah, it is a little bit of that.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, so much super exciting stuff. Like, it doesn't matter if it takes time. For me, as the coming from the player's perspective, like I'm happy to sit patiently, and I know not everyone shares this opinion with me, but I'm happy to sit patiently, knowing that you guys are discussing this, that you guys have all this in the back of your minds, that you're taking all this feedback from us, and then you're figuring out, like you said, having those discussions to figure out the best way of doing it, because that way, when it does come out, we're just going to be so awestruck and so happy to be having it all working
For
in a
sure.
way that's
And
going to feel great.
definitely. And that's kind of the interesting part about live shipping a game is, you know, you can think of the ideas all you want, but then you have to actually implement them and you have to do it in a timely manner.
Yep.
And so that's where kind of that cost evaluation of mechanics comes into play, where like, would we love to add, X, Y, and Z? Absolutely. But, like let's say that takes 3 months to develop. You can't have a game just sitting around dormant for 3 months. You have to have some sort of constant rollout that keeps people engaged. So that's
Yeah.
that's one place where we pride ourselves among the other Web3 games is those constant releases, even if they're minor. We want people to have something exciting to look forward to every week.
And it definitely feels that way. Every time I jump on, every week I'm like, I just jumped on, haven't had a chance to do my Wednesday resets until the weekend, and oh my god, the inventory's been updated and it's highlights, and I can see, oh, it's awesome, like it's great to see all that kind of stuff. It just
Sure.
it does, it keeps you engaged.
Yeah.
I actually have a really different question, which I only just
Sure.
remembered that I had. Now, we talked a lot
Go for
about
it.
stats, and everyone's super interested in stat balancing and PvP, especially. But I'm actually really curious about the stats that mobs have, and how you guys have gone about building in, the unique classes, elementals, and then attack types and that kind of thing. Because, like you said, we want to be able to, as a raider, feel like we're strong now at our max level, but have room to scale. Is there an interaction there with mobs and their stats and their different tiers that I'm, as I say this, realizing how difficult this job must be, but how have you guys gone about that?
Sure. And so right now they're really basic. They just rely on, just the assumed player like max level, so they're designed around killing something that's level 8, that level 8, 9, 10 range
Right.
is kind of how their stats are put. If a raider's at level 20, they would absolutely obliterate, a current legendary perhaps.
Okay.
Um, and so there are a couple different approaches that we're looking at taking there. One is probably adjusting mobs to raider level, so the mob could, if you're a level 1 raider and you enter a dungeon, you're probably still going to die, but at least you would have a little bit better of a chance than facing off against, just a fully torqued legendary right off the bat, or a fully torqued
Yeah.
mythic. So looking at raider level is important, and also looking at that dungeon level is important. So currently mobs get a little bit more difficult as you scale through the dungeon.
That's in
Finding a
endless
common
mode,
or a
right?
fodder. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, Finding that common or fodder in endless dungeon. At level 1 is a little bit different than finding it at level 10. Um, and sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question. You were asking about specifically just regular dungeons then?
Or yeah, just or even not even dungeons as we know them now, but going forward, yeah.
Hmm.
So, how does, because if potentially, way down the line, death dungeons become a thing. How are you
Right.
going? Okay, look, this raider, he's entered this dungeon and he's level 7, but there's a
Mhm.
legendary mob in there, maybe behind this door because he chose to go behind it, and there's a random
Right.
chance.
Hmm.
Is this it? Does the mob scale off? The fact that he's, one, a legendary, two, he's got whatever special attack type he's got, and three, the raiders level, or is it the dungeons level, or a combination thereof? I'm just really curious, and I don't even really know how to properly ask the question because I'm not a game designer.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
okay. I understand what you're asking. And since our game doesn't currently rely on like a map or anything, you can just click into a dungeon immediately. A lot of games mitigate that risk by, oh, you have to be level 20 to like enter this area.
Right. Yep.
So we'll probably have, stuff that prevents someone from clicking on a level 40 dungeon, if they're just level 7 and stuff like that. Um, but definitely we'll have some sort of scaling to match what that raider's level is at. If and this is a challenge that we had to start discussing with Endless Dungeon is if we implement loot, uh, or rather when we implement loot to the dungeon, do you want it to scale with the raider's level? If a level 4 raider gets lucky and clears, to floor 20, somehow,
Somehow, yeah.
it wouldn't, like, let's say you're an agi build and you just, they miss every time and you make it to level 20. Should you get that, level 20 weapon that's been balanced for level 20? So there's just some of the questions that we have to answer, and kind of what we've arrived at is there should be, kind of like you mentioned, a little bit of both. Raider level should be taken into account. You don't want to give someone something that's way overpowered for them, and you also don't want to give them something that's way underpowered. If you're a level 10 raider and you encounter a mythic on floor 1 of Endless Dungeon, you don't want to get penalized for that. You should still get something out of it. You shouldn't
Right.
get a level 1 sword, because why would you need a level 1 sword?
Yeah.
Um,
So in
definitely
that
a little
sense,
bit
is
of
it
both.
kind of like how now if you got like that really good Blade of the Beast drop in Hogger at level 3, you could maybe do, Children's Cries, which is technically a level 6 dungeon, but you're level 3 because you've got a little bit of a payoff because you got lucky. But it's not too overpowered that you can compete with like a level 6 in PvP, but you can compete with some mobs a little bit more.
Yeah, correct. And I think
Okay.
I deviated from your question a little bit and started talking about loot. And I'll get into that further
No,
in a
but
second
that's
too.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, because my current project that I'm working on internally is mainly loot based. Um, but in terms of the mobs, one thing that we'd really like to do, because it's not in the game currently, is add that diversity based on, their attack skills. We'd love to have, attack scaling differently based on the attack type that the mobs have. Just kind
Yeah.
of adding that level of expectation where, if a mob hits you with a splash of water, it probably shouldn't do the same thing as if they're crashing an entire world down on top of your raider.
Right. Yeah.
But right now, if both of those mobs happen to be mythic, then they're gonna be hitting you the same.
Yeah.
So kind of adding that diversity based on, mob type or attack type, and eventually going even further where each mob has their own distinct, profiles would be really cool.
Yeah. Well, when
It's
mobs
just
were
it's
revealed, it
something
kind of
that,
felt like that you had that potential to go in that direction, right? With
yeah, definitely.
yeah.
And the only challenge is we want to add mob utility first before we, add those intricacies. Because those are what takes time, and that's what takes, like, crazy balancing, kind of as you mentioned. Once you look at all the things that go into it, you start to realize, like, there is a lot that needs to be accounted for in this scenario, and that's why we're and for all of Crypto Raiders, we've really been focused on utility first and intricacies second, but not far behind.
Right.
Um, because at the end of the day, that's what DeFi is people want, that utility, which is important, and they
Yep.
should want that. They should want those returns.
Returns, a sense of ownership, and for me, a big one, sense of community now as well.
Yeah, and that's what's been incredible for us is the
Yeah.
community side.
And on that note, I think we should talk a little bit about guilds.
Yeah. Um, sure. Do you have any specific questions about them, or you want me to just
I mean,
ramble?
if you want to just ramble, go for it. Yeah, keen to hear your thoughts on how you see guilds currently, and how you see them evolving in the future to kind of maybe align more with classic guilds in other games and their
Sure.
functionality. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another great example of, utility first and complexity second, where now raiders can create a guild and you can have your friends in there or your, employees for some people, and you can get in there and they can run your raiders, and that's awesome. But that's nowhere near the end of the road for how we want that to be built out. Looking into more complex stuff like, not allowing people to just run any raider whenever they want. Um, adding maybe some rules around it, some ways to share in the ownership a little bit better than just automatically seeing everyone's raider in there. Maybe being able to pick which raiders you would like to be submitted to your guild members and stuff like
Like
that.
lock people out or
Um,
lock people to certain raiders, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. More like actual management of it.
Yeah,
There's a lot of trust involved in it right now, which is awesome. We're thankful to have a community that, can uphold that trust. But at the same time, like I said, it shouldn't end there. We want to do a lot more with it. And then getting into, like you mentioned, the more traditional sense of guilds is something that we're really looking forward to. Web3 is interesting because the communities exist in Discord. In a lot of games, especially in the past, you don't have that. You communicate in game a lot.
yeah,
Um, and not saying we want to get away from people communicating in Discord because I think that's the best place to do it. Um, but having that sense of guild community is something that's really important in traditional gaming, at least in my opinion. And so having things that you do as a guild and not just for a guild is one thing that we really would like to focus on moving forward. Having events that you partake in as a guild or raids that you partake in as a guild um, is very cool, and that's something that brings value to that guild mechanic. I've seen a lot of people ask like, why would I join a guild right now? Like, I run my own raiders, and why would I want to run someone else's raiders?
yeah,
Perfectly valid question. And that's because guilds maybe aren't associated in our game with the way that they're traditionally thought of, but we would
yeah.
love to have that moving forward where there's a lot more shared responsibility and shared growth and reward as well.
So you envision it becoming more of it's sub communities, right? Um,
Yes.
yeah, a kind of area for people to join and feel a sense of like duty and honor to be part of that guild, and then they have competitions like guild leaderboards for different dungeons or raids, that kind of thing, right?
Exactly, because you're going to have some people that want a guild so that people can run their raiders, but there's also that entire traditional sense of a guild where, you all have your own ownership of things and you're sharing in experiences. So,
Yeah, and that's really exciting to me because I've not really had that kind of in-depth experience with many games or any games before, because I didn't get big into RuneScape and I never played WoW on my own account, that kind of thing. And I've always heard so much, strong, great nostalgic talk about it, like, oh man, we stayed up for like 6 hours and with my
oh
guild and we
yeah.
did this raid, and I'm like, it just sounds so much fun. It's just so much fun.
It's amazing, and I think you're gonna love it. If you haven't been a part of that in the past, it's really special. It's similar to, the Crypto Raider sense of community.
Yeah,
I mean, you will quite literally talk to those people for the rest of your life. You make lifelong
yeah.
friends in our community, and the same's true for guilds as well in other games.
Well, I'm super excited for that.
Mhm.
Is there any feature of guilds that you think is definitely coming and that you're super excited for?
Mhm. That's a good question. I don't think that I know any off the top of my head because I don't do
Yeah.
the strategy stuff for it. There's a lot of ideation of possibilities, but I don't want to mislead people by giving like anything concrete. Um, but
But we could do
I know,
this. What could we do?
yeah, I mean, kind of the stuff I mentioned, like allowing allowing you to do guild activities,
Yeah.
like sharing in those raids and that sort of thing. We've also, I can't remember if this was an internal discussion or something a community member mentioned to me, but it's one that I really liked, and it's having some shared inventories between guild members as well. So, maybe you can share keys with your guild members. That's really useful for
Right.
running raids.
Yep.
That more scholarship type system, but also, when you have gear NFTs, being able to share gear across your guild could be incredibly useful as well.
Right.
A lot more things would need to be in place for that to, for security and that
Yep.
sort of thing. But when you get into shared guild inventories, there's some really cool things there that you could do.
And you mentioned as well that you're working a lot on gear and loot right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is No, I had a really good question. I just lost it. What was it about? About what you just said. Like, oh yeah. So if gear NFTs become a thing and big, really good loot drops become gear NFTs,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it's best to have a system where those are open and always tradable, or if it gets bound to a certain raider if you decide to equip it and bind it, so that it becomes a little bit more rare and it's almost like a burn mechanism? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both is really important. I think that obviously the best way to regulate that is to do kind of that bind on equip deal where once you get it, you can trade it, but as soon as someone equips it, it's locked. I think that's great, and I think that's something that we would probably want to approach for end game loot. You talk a lot about best in slot gear,
Yeah.
and if you look at almost any game, that's how it works.
Right.
It's bound to your character as soon as it's equipped. So I don't think we have any official decision on that, but that's definitely the leading option for like tradable gear for
Yeah.
the and I'm not saying it could be rarity locked, but it would maybe look something like all epics and legendaries are bound on equip, um to retain their value
Yeah.
more than anything.
It's certainly a tough question, but I mean, it sounds like you guys are putting in the thought that it deserves. So,
Definitely. And
okay.
the one thing that I meant to mention earlier, I know we're getting close to our time here, but uh, loot reworks to allow for more variability in loot, and less rigidity. Is that a word?
Yep.
We don't want them to be so concrete, I guess. Like if you get a Lightbringer, it's strength, so strength is hot right now. Something more along the lines of if you get a Lightbringer, it could roll strength or int or maybe even agi.
Right. Okay.
That's sort of thing where you get a Lightbringer and maybe it's a strong Lightbringer of luck or a agile Lightbringer of wisdom. That sort
Right.
of thing
Yep.
where you have
So there's a
some
lot of
emphasize.
variability within that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's really appeals to me. I like that. I like a little bit more randomness and almost ambiguity. You have to embrace that ambiguity to really feel like you're enjoying the game and you're not, like you said, locked into a rigid. I've gone strength build. I want the Lightbringer because it's strength.
Right.
Yeah.
And come gear NFTs, you have to have that. Because something that's valuable to you may not be valuable to someone else, and vice
Very
versa.
true.
So that
Yeah.
diversity makes trading a lot more possible.
Totally. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but that's a very good point. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. There's a bunch of questions coming in chat, so I think we'll actually take questions from chat now, if
Sure.
you're happy for that.
Definitely.
Next airdrop will be alchemy tables. Yes or no?
Oh man. Do I have to give a yes or no?
Yeah, it's yes or no. Just say no, and we can move on.
Yeah, I think I'll have to go with the no on
Okay,
that.
no,
Next
okay.
airdrop, I mean, putting timeline on it too.
All right, but some more serious questions now, guys. If you have any, feel free to ask them for the last 5 or so minutes here of the podcast. What's your favorite stat, Centurion?
My favorite stat. Ooh, that's a tough one. I think my favorite is int.
Really?
It's actually it's a little underpowered right now. It's super strong, but it's a stat where out of all three main stats, it's the one that requires the most support from other stats.
Right.
Strength can kind of stand alone as a build. Int requires you to piece together secondary stats strategically to gain its like full value. And that's where I've had a lot of fun with it
I was gonna
in
say
kind of
exactly
my
that.
testing.
Yeah.
It gets hit pretty hard, but
It
if you
really
build
feels
your
like you have to be smart about where you put your other stats and what you're picking
yeah,
along with it, right? Yeah.
hmm
Which I think
yeah, I
is a
think
good
int
thing. I
has the
think it
most
adds a
min max
lot.
potential. hmm
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Who's your favorite Raider? Raider NFT.
I
And why
mean,
is it
it has
Rick?
to be. It's Tammy. I mean,
It's
if
Tabby.
yeah, it has to be absolutely.
No way, man. Don't
Huge.
tell Deejus.
I'm a huge fan of all of them, but Tammy has stolen my heart.
So Tigris is coming, right? Because it's Year of the Tiger.
Man, I'm pushing hard for that one. We've got
We've got support
I
here,
haven't
guys.
gotten a definite answer, but it feels like everyone in the team has said like yes, we should do it, and then it just
Nice.
hasn't been
I
hasn't been
guess then
there.
the
So
challenge is finding the best way to actually do that, right?
yeah, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if you see something on it soon. That is like a cold take. Like we
Yeah.
haven't talked about it,
Well,
but
it's the Year of the
I'm gonna
Tiger,
talk about
so
it with tonight. Oh yeah,
oh
no,
no.
it has to.
So there's a whole
Yeah,
year to make it happen. It's fine, guys. We got a
yeah,
year.
yeah.
When do you think we'll be able to start like breaking down shabbies or disenchanting or deconstructing gear? And is that something that
Um,
you're excited for, or you definitely think is
so
planned?
yeah, so date-wise, I don't know, but timeline-wise, I know that it is like absolute high priority as soon as we get the re-architecture finished,
Cool.
which from my understanding, we're towards the end of that. So, um, again, I can't give definite dates, but that is like utmost priority because inventories are getting massive.
Yeah.
And even if so my proposition to the team was even if we don't automatically have an enchanting mechanic yet, we need to have a disenchanting mechanic so you can start collecting those materials
Right.
like immediately
Yeah,
because
that makes
inventories
sense.
are just so big. So at least tackle half the problem, as soon as possible would be my answer to that.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. This is a great question. PUBG or Fortnite?
Oh God. I'm gonna say PUBG on that one.
Thank God.
I Yeah, as a game, PUBG, but a lot of respect for Fortnite and the empire that they
The
built by
marketing,
manipulating
right?
12-year-olds. Yeah, like cool. Good for them.
All right. I got one for you. What's your favorite Pokemon? Tough one.
Oh man, that's a really good question.
Also, I haven't played since like I don't know. So anything new? If you say something new, I'll have no idea what it is.
Are you familiar with Lucario?
Yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
would say he was always at the top of my list.
And
He's not that good in general, but I love him.
I don't know how that's uncanny because he was literally the best Pokemon I had in my party for a
He's
long
pretty good
time.
in the regular game.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
competitive, he's a little iffy, but
Right.
I love him. He's fantastic.
Our ambassador's greater than Tyrael.
Yeah, I don't even know who that guy is or how he found his way into, the Crypto Raiders team chat, but
Yeah.
the
Interesting guy.
ambassadors are outstanding. They do a really good job of putting up with Tyrael, so
Nice. Um different question. Do you exercise a lot? And if yes, what's your favorite
uh
kind of workout?
yeah, I actually do exercise quite a bit. Um Not, I'm no strongman, and I could probably run a little bit more than I do, but I really enjoy reverse lunges.
Awesome.
It's a good way to get your legs in good shape, low impact relative to a lot of other workouts you could do. So, huge fan of it. My back's
Nice.
messed up, so that's one that I'm
Right.
able to do.
If you like reverse lunges, I suggest split squat lunges going forward. Really good for the hips, and as a result, your back. Maybe.
I will absolutely have to try that.
Yeah. Why corgis? Had to ask.
Yeah. I love corgis. I think they're cute. I think they're, a little dorky. I actually, in school once,
Great
I had
question,
a
Tina.
teacher that would assign an animal to each of the classmates. Most people got like a cat or a deer. He gave me a tranquilized corgi. He said because I was calm, but I seemed capable of energy and spontaneity, and
That's
it was
fantastic.
a little weird, but I think partially because of that, I've always resonated with corgis. But I just think they're great. They're cute. They're stubby, and they're just happy dudes. So
That's fantastic. That's great, man. Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, one last Crypto Raiders question. So
Sure.
I often play the music from the Crypto Raiders SoundCloud on my stream from all the submissions we had, which are incredible. But I noticed just under 2 weeks ago, you guys put up an orb and a wand sound on there. Is weapon sound effects update coming soon?
That is something that's in the works. I did not know that those were put on there.
Yeah, so there's two up there.
I don't know if that was like a sneaky leak that we planned, or if that was something that they forgot people still monitored. But yeah, we are working on sound effects for that stuff, and we actually have animations for different weapons as well, that or different weapon types rather, that are going to come with that server side architecture.
Hell yeah. There we go. I'm excited. With that, we get to our last question. Pickles on burgers, yes or no?
Ooh. Man.
I don't like the thinking.
That's I go 50-50 on that. Do
How?
I approve of them on burgers? Yes. Do I always get them on burgers? No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a little
chicken
sus.
sandwiches always.
Okay. I respect that.
But yeah, I love pickles. If anything, I would get them on the burger and eat them separately.
Yes.
But overall, I approve.
This message is approved. All right, mate. Well, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to take up too much more of your night. It's been so great chatting with you. Thank you for all your awesome insight and for putting up with my lack of game stat knowledge.
And thank you for putting up with mine.
Oh man, it's been great. I loved having you. Super, super nice to talk to you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Appreciate it. Y'all are doing a good thing by supporting Pickle. He's doing awesome things for the community, and we love him. So
thanks, mate. All right, thank you everyone. We will see you in the next stream.
Dina drawn. Dina message me. I'm looking for Dina drawn. Why can't I find you? Dina drawn.